Today we'll be talking about the balance between individual liberties and public interest. As we previously talked about, in the United States, you do have a lot of liberties, but there are limits at times. For example, you are allowed to smoke if you're 18, but you cannot smoke in a public park where there's children present. Another example is you're allowed to drive in Virginia if you have a license. However, you have to wear a seatbelt. It's a law, so they do limit you in some ways. What about natural rights? Natural rights are rights that you have no matter what. However, few rights, if any, are considered absolute. At times, individual rights must be balanced against the public interests. Once again, that's where speed limits when you're driving come in handy, because you're allowed to drive. However, they limit how fast you can drive, and that's for public interest, because driving too fast can be dangerous, it can kill people, you can get in accidents. So we're going to look at the First Amendment rights and how those can be limited at times. So for the limitations of rights, let's look at speech. Remember, the First Amendment guarantees you free speech. However, some forms of speech are not protected. Those examples are libel, slander, and obscenity. Libel is an untrue written statement, so you can't write anything about somebody that isn't true. Next is slander, which is an untrue oral statement, so you can't say anything about someone that's not true. Last one is obscenity, which is an extremely offensive word or expression, so that would be using cuss words or something in that nature. Another example of limitation of speech is speech that is clear and present danger is not protected, such as shouting fire in a crowded building. This happened a long time ago where there was a crowded building, somebody yelled fire, and everybody ran to get out, and a lot of people died because of this, and there was never a fire. The person did his joke, so you can't run around yelling fire when there is not one. Next, we will be talking about the limitations of rights with the press, which is newspapers, websites, and the press can be restricted when publication will cause serious and irreparable harm. So, example, breach of national security. For instance, a newspaper can't report where the United States military is going to be tomorrow because it could put them at risk. Another example, limitation rights for the press is not able to print something that they know is false, so they can't say something that's not true. They can't say something like the president was a murderer if it's not true and they don't have any proof.
If he comes in and out.
Next, we'll be talking about the limitations of rights on religion. So some examples are, there are limitations on animal sacrifice rituals. Animal sacrifice rituals where you kill an animal for your religion. And one example is you can't shackle and hoist a cow without stunning them first. You can't harm humans, especially against their will. And you still must follow laws of the state and country. For example, polygamy, that's where you have more than one wife, or you're not allowed to do that because that is against the law. Last one is limitation of rights for assembly. Remember, assembly is where a large group of people get together and meet. So if you do this, you can't infringe on people's right to travel. So that could be if you're blocking a road, blocking a sidewalk, people still have to be able to get to where they need to go. It cannot be violence. You can't be starting fires, breaking windows. You can't go on private property without the property owner's permission. You need permission to go on someone's property. And the government can restrict where you gather. So if you gather, say in Washington, D.C., they might tell you to go to a certain part of Washington, D.C. There are limitations on where you can gather at times.